and welcome to Our Mind Gym with Renee, a Team Ferriss original production, where we believe that motocross is more than just going fast. It is an empowering vehicle that teaches us how to navigate life. Join us weekly as we discuss the life lessons and growth mindset that give us a competitive advantage both on and off the track. Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Our Mind Gym podcast series. I am your host, Renee Ferriss, and today I'm going to be talking about the topic of anxiety. This is something I get asked a lot about. In fact, just yesterday, I received another message asking me, how do I handle anxiety with the way Dean rides and now my beautiful daughter, Maya? So I'd love to share that with you. And I hope to share some insights that might just give you a new perspective and perhaps even help you change your relationship with anxiety. To give a bit of context for my new listeners who have just stumbled across this podcast, my husband is a 3-time Australian motocross champion, Dean Ferriss, who has recently returned to racing after a significant back injury and is now pushing his limits once again to be the fastest rider in our country and master the fine art of motocross racing. My brother is popular YouTuber Joel Evans, who suffered a significant neck injury from a motorbike crash back in 2015 that threatened his life. And to this day, he is still racing full-time and pursuing the dream of being a fully paid athlete. And now I have 2 daughters, aged 3 and 4, who are bike mad and love to ride. My eldest, Maya, we got her a bike for her 4th birthday back in August. And she didn't really ride it straight away, but pretty much 2 weeks after that, she was on it and just has not stopped wanting to ride. And it's just been progressing faster and faster all of the time, trying new things. She started jumping last month, just out of the blue. And in fact, just this last weekend, we had a huge milestone with her when she decided that after just 2 months on the PV50, she wanted a bigger challenge and to try and ride the TTR 110, which is almost double the size and power. Now, I shared a post on social media about my thought processes and support for her when this happened, which triggered a huge response from my audience and then prompted this podcast. With many parents wondering, how can I do this and not be riddled with anxiety, knowing what I know about the dangers? The answer is perspective. I'm looking at the situation differently. My thought processes are taken into account other factors, and I'm making decisions based on my values and a different fear. This comes from my years of researching what causes us to have accidents and how to reduce it through mindset and mental skills training. And this is also what enables me to help myself and my family, and now even more kids and motocross families, to change their relationship with fear, both on and off the track. You see, we're all programmed for survival. So our natural instinct is to protect with pre-programmed fears of injury and death, which is drummed into us at every motocross race we enter at riders briefing, when they kindly remind us that motorcycle racing is dangerous and participation in this event can result in injury or death to rider and or machinery. Yep, just like you, I've heard that a few times. So naturally, this triggers our fear centers and puts our inner chimp on alert. But often the fear that we get is so strong that it overpowers our ability to see any other factors. And that's what I want to present to you today, to give you another lens to see this through and help release some of that anxiety that's holding you and your team back. So for those of you that have been to a Team Ferriss coaching school, you may have heard this one already, but for those listeners who are new to Team Ferriss, I'd like to start with one of my favorite NLP practices that help us identify the power of language. So I'm going to start by asking you and giving you all a little pre-test. So play along at home, please, wherever you are. Even if you're in the car, it's okay, you can still play along. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to give you one simple instruction, and all you got to do is see if you can follow it. It's like a little mind game, practice test. So if I ask you this, don't think of a pink elephant. What's the first thing you just thought of? Now, the reason so many of you are smiling right now is because you all just thought of a pink elephant. Now, the reason you thought of the pink elephant is because that part of your brain actually processes the world in images and metaphors. And so therefore, it has communicated to you with an image of a pink elephant and gone, don't think of me. And so because we haven't given it an instruction of what we do want it to do instead, it's focusing on the pink elephant that we don't want to think of. So what's this got to do with motocross, you might ask? Well, what do you think happens if the last thing you say to your child as they go out on the racetrack is, don't crash? Yep. What do you think we're putting in their minds? We're literally transferring our anxieties, our fears of a loved one getting injured or hurt through to them and increasing the probability of it actually happening by making that the last thing that they're thinking of as they're going on and hitting the track. And so that is why this is so important, this practice and actually understanding your own anxieties, because whatever we feel, we tend to project onto our loved ones, and particularly as parents or partners, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, we have the power to really impact the rider at hand. So I feel it's really important to address this, look at exactly what is anxiety, understand it first and foremost, and then do what we can to change our relationship with it. All anxiety is a heightened level of fear where you've felt a fear, and then instead of just feeling the fear and doing it anyway or moving through the fear, you've latched onto it. Your brain has taken that and we've added worry, and then we've worried about the fear and we've made it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger in our minds. And the more that we feed that, the more that we grow it in our minds, the greater the symptoms are throughout our body. And those symptoms are what we label anxiety. It's where our body goes into a state of fight or flight in order to protect us from our future imagined situation or event that we have perceived in our minds and imagined up to have more drawbacks than benefits, more challenges than support, more pain than pleasure. And so when we recognize that anxiety is just a built up, exaggerated fear, then we can ease that off by neutralizing the fear and taking more calculated risks. And so to give this a little bit more context, it's really important at this point to recognize that fear only exists in our mind. We are never actually afraid in the moment. So an analogy that I love to use when it comes to this is if you're standing on the edge of the cliff, what are you afraid of? Falling. Now, once you've fallen and you're flying through the air, what are you afraid of? Landing. Great. Now, once you've landed, what are you afraid of? Rehab, recovery, pain, all of those kind of things. So if we look at that analogy and we look at what happens in fear, we start to recognize and realize that our fears are purely a future imagination, made an assumption that that future scenario is going to be negative. So what our brain is doing at that moment is it is focusing in on all of the drawbacks of that future scenario. It is honing in on what are the negatives, what are the downsides, how's it going to be hard, what are the challenges. What our brain in that moment is neglecting to do is identify and recognize any of the upsides of that situation. Your brain does that as a coping mechanism to try and use your impulses and instincts to keep you safe. It goes way back to our caveman days and our evolutionary traits where, let's think about it. Years ago, we didn't want, like if you had a saber-toothed tiger coming at you, you didn't want your logical mind to come in and go, oh, maybe he's friendly. Or maybe we might be able to play together and it could be fun. Your brain just goes, holy shit, that tiger's going to eat me. I've got to run. And your legs start moving before you even get a chance to think about it. And so that is how fear has evolved. And even though these days, some of our fears are irrational, they still impact us the same way. Our minds play out the worst case scenario for us like a movie and then release hormones throughout our body that trigger us to act. But what is the cost of us telling our kids, you can't do that? That's too big for you. Slow down. Keeping in mind that our kids are forming their beliefs about themselves based on their experiences. And so if we stop them from even trying or inject our values and doubt into them, we're subconsciously programming them to hesitate, to question their abilities, to doubt themselves. And you know how much harder things are to do when you're uncertain. So the first thing that I like to do is remind myself that maximum growth occurs at the border of support and challenge. Without challenge, we'd end up juvenilely dependent and useless. And so when I think about what it is that I want for my kids, it's to have them grow into strong, independent adults who truly experience life, who give things a go, regardless of whether they'll succeed or fail, then stand back up and try again and keep doing things that truly fulfill their soul, that give them that sense of inner accomplishment and peace of mind, knowing that they did life. I think too many people in society right now are growing old with regret, going through the motions, sticking with what they know, doing what they've always done, too afraid to step outside their comfort zone and actually pursue their dreams. Think about it. How many things do you have in this lifetime that you would love to do or experience, but you haven't and aren't even on the trajectory to do it because you don't think you can? Because you're afraid you might look stupid if you fail, because you might lose what you have, or because you might get hurt, because somehow people won't love you anymore if you're not good. Do you want this for your loved ones? Or do you want them to know that they're loved regardless and that they can do anything they set their mind to? Now, obviously, I know which one I want, but I also know that that comes at a cost. They will take risks. They will have hard days. They may need more support. So this is where I take the responsibility to step up. In order to breathe belief into them and teach them to be limitless, I need to release my own limitations. And so I do that by addressing my worries, the problem beneath the problem. What isn't causing this anxiety? What specifically am I worried about? Because the fact is, I can't have anxiety without content in my mind. So I think about, what are they doing or want to do? And then I dive deep into my mind to find, what story am I telling myself about this? What do I think will happen if they try and it doesn't work out, if they crash or if they get hurt? And then what I do is I take myself through a powerful set of questions that helps to neutralize the associated fears and remind me that every event in life has both sides. There is no such scenario, past or future, that is in actuality all bad or all good. There's a saying I love, and it's nothing is bad or good until thinking makes it so. And so my mentor, Dr. DeMartini, says, wisdom is the instantaneous recognition that a crisis is a blessing. And that's proven to be true in so many ways. So as I explained before, the only reason we're experiencing anxiety is because our brain is blocking one side. So once we open it up and see both, we truly can be grateful for the experience, regardless of the outcome. Speaking of which, it also helps if you know what you value most in life, because if you can specifically search for benefits to you in those areas and see how it's serving you and happening for you and not to you, it actually will help to relieve any associated pains and stuff with it. And I also do this with the person that I'm afraid for and to me as well. Now, this podcast is not long enough for me to go through the entire DeMartini method in depth. But what I can do is give you a quick 5-step Q&A process that you can do with yourself anytime to neutralize your fear and take calculated risks anytime that you start to feel anxious or worried. And I can guarantee you that it will change your life. So grab your pen and paper and write these down. You might even want to save these in your phone somewhere so you can quickly revert to them when any new worries pop up. All right, you got your pen and paper? Question 1, what am I worried about? And I want you to get really clear here. So think about remember the analogy of if you're on the cliff, the falling, the landing, right? Try and go kind of as far. So the specific incident and then also the outcome. So sometimes I guess question 1 can almost be split into 2 parts. So what are you worried about? Okay, I'm worried about them crashing. Great. What are you actually worried about that? What's the consequence of them crashing? And kind of get a bit detailed there. Question 2, what specific actions can I take right now to reduce the probability of this happening? So what can you do or they do to reduce the chance of them crashing? Question 3, what specific actions can I take to reduce the impact if it happens anyway? Because sometimes we are going to go and do everything we try, everything that, we want to do to try and reduce the chance, but sometimes it's going to happen anyway. Sometimes they're still going to crash. So what can you do to reduce the impact? So to reduce the suffering. Question 4, what are the benefits of this happening? This is going to be a really challenging one because our brain is so used to thinking of the drawbacks, thinking of the negatives. I just want you to expand your mind, think outside the box, and ask yourself, what possibly could be a benefit of this happening? It can be anything like I save money, or we might skip a couple of races, which gives us time to go and do something that we wouldn't normally do, whatever it may be. For the kids, something I find that comes up a lot for them is they get out of chores while they're recovering, whatever it may be. But I challenge you to think outside of the box and ask yourself, what are the benefits of my worst case scenario happening? And then the final quick 5th question here is, what are the drawbacks if it never happens? So if you get exactly what you want, what's the drawback to that? What opportunity or challenge are you missing out on because of this? Of just getting it right, of having everything go smoothly. So try it and let me know in the reviews how you go. And you can do this on any worry. It doesn't have to be the fear of crashing. It can be literally anything. So this tool is super universal, and let me know, try it. Let me know how you go. I would love to hear from you. Now, I honestly could talk on this topic for hours with so many more stories to tell, but I'm going to save them for another episode and wrap this one up here today. So thank you so much for tuning in to our Mind Gym podcast series. I am Renee Ferris, and I will see you next week. If you have been enjoying this podcast and are ready to dive deeper, release your own mental blocks, and see for yourself what life is like with more ease and flow, I would like to personally invite you to click the link below and book in your free strategy session. During this 30 minutes together, we will identify the top 3 things that are holding you back and create a customized action plan for you to move forward. Take action now and start thriving on and off the track.